I'm Jason with Long Bottom Farm, and today we're going to do part 2 of our mobile range coop that you see behind me here. This was a DIY homemade project that we did basically because we were tired of moving multiple chicken tractors by hand. I'm getting older in my farming days, and this was just a way that we could put the machinery to use, raise more birds in one area, and just overall simplify what we're doing. If you haven't seen part 1, you need to see that first. That is where we build the base of this chicken tractor. Part 2, we're going to talk about how we added the hoops, the hardware cloth, and the tarps, and basically turned it into a functional sled. Before we jump into the video real quick, we have a newsletter. In this newsletter, I talk about things I can't talk about on here. I share things that I found on the internet. These are all things that will help you as a farmer or homesteader. It's all free, doesn't cost anything. You'll get an email every 1 to 2 weeks. I think you'll find it helpful on your farm and homestead. You can sign up with the link below. Now on to the mobile range coop. So once we had our base established, again, there's a link below to part 1 in that video where you can see how we built the base and how it allowed us to attach the rest of what you're going to see here. So first we had to make hoops. We made these hoops out of galvanized fence rail. You can get this at Home Depot or Lowe's. They're 10.5 foot. It takes 2 of them to make 1 arch. We have 7 arches on the sled. We were able to bend these using a 12-foot hoop bender, is basically what it's called. We got it from Bootstrap Farmer. Don't have any affiliation or sponsorship. There's a link below. This was a little bit over $100, and it allows you to take galvanized fence post and bend it into the size you want. We bought, again, a 12-foot. I believe they go up to 20-foot. Typically, they're made for greenhouses, but we use this, again, for our sled. These really didn't take too long to bend. My daughter and wife helped, and after making all the measurements, you typically make a 9-inch measurement, and then from that 9-inch measurement, it's 18 inches all the way up. You feed it into the hoop bender on those marks that you made, and then you just bend. And once you attach 2 of the 10.5 bent galvanized fence rails together, then you have a 12-foot hoop. These are very strong, and that's something we wanted because, again, we have a lot of wind here. We're also going to be hanging feeders, waters, hundreds of pounds likely from them. So we wanted something really strong that would support that weight and just be sturdy and last. Once we had those hoops bent, the next step was to attach these hoops to the base of the sled. Again, when we built the base, we put 3/4 inch steel pegs, and the ends of this fence rail fit over those pegs. Now, one caveat is that I thought that both ends would fit, and with these fence rails, there's a tapered end, and you have to cut that end off. We found a real easy way to do that, is just a Sawzall with a metal blade. Goes right through it like butter. Again, you'll want to cut one tapered end off, not off of all of them, because you have to fit 2 of the galvanized posts together. So leave one tapered end to fit them together, then the final tapered end, cut that off so that you have 2 open ends, and then they'll fit perfectly on your pegs. And once we put these on the pegs, we didn't attach them right away. We'll get into the next steps, but what you're going to do is put the hardware cloth on, and then you're going to secure that hardware cloth with furring strips, like 2x4s, and that one bolt will go through the 2x4, through the hardware cloth, and through the peg. Therefore, it brings them all together with one bolt, securing your galvanized fence post to the base, as well as securing your hardware cloth to the structure. So once we got all of our hoops in place, again, we didn't put the bolts in yet. They're basically just sitting in place. Next was to put on the hardware cloth. We chose to use hardware cloth rather than chicken wire because the hardware cloth has much smaller holes, and these smaller holes will prevent hands like from raccoons and different things from getting in there. I feel the chicken wire is just a little too flimsy, and if chickens are laying next to that chicken wire, a raccoon or something can get its hand in there and grab the chicken. Therefore, we use hardware cloth on most of the build. It costs a little bit more, but it'll last a lot longer and protect your birds a lot better. What we used was 2-foot hardware cloth, so 2 foot high we got a 50-foot roll. The sleds are 24 feet long, therefore a 50-foot roll cut it in half would cover both sides along the bottom. In hindsight, I wish we would have gotten 3-foot high cloth, and I'll get to that in a minute. So from this point on, let's just say we use 3-foot cloth, and for your purposes, if you're copying this or building something like this, use 3-foot cloth. Basically, all we did was rolled it out, cut it to its length, laid it up against the post, and then zip ties. This is where zip ties are really your friend. Get a corner hooked, pull tight, hook the other corner, and the zip ties will just help hold everything in place until you can get your furring strips up and actually attach the hardware cloth to the metal framing of the sled. We use zip ties for everything. Always have a good supply of those on hand. It's almost like duct tape, just one of those things you can't go wrong with. So once you've got your hardware cloth attached and zip tied and in place, then the last thing is just put on the furring strips. And as you can see behind me here, along the bottom of the sled, there's wood, and then about 2 foot up, there's wood that runs across it as well. And these basically pinch the hardware cloth to the hoops that we have bent, essentially locking them into place. And then from the inside, you can then staple that hardware cloth to the furring strip. So it's a really good system that just makes it enclosed, tight, it's not going to come apart, and nothing's going to get in. To attach these, the galvanized fence post is 1 3/8 inch in diameter. The hardware cloth is negligible, and then the wood we used was 2x4s. So we used a 3.5 inch bolt, 1/4 in diameter, and that runs through the wood, through the hardware cloth, through the galvanized fence post, and secures that all together. Kind of sandwiches the hardware cloth in between, and that was the perfect size bolt to make that happen. For making the holes, we used a metal bit. I believe it was a 7/16 inch, so bigger than the bolt, just to make it easy for the bolt to go in. And then we used washers on all the bolts. So very simple. You'll need a couple wrenches to tighten those up. We found it much easier actually to take a drill and attach the socket head onto that and then just hold the other side with the wrench. Makes it go a whole lot faster than all the cranking that you would do with a regular ratchet. So once we got the sides done, that way we've got the hardware cloth, we've got our furring strips up. Next step was to do the front and the back ends. And on the back end, essentially we just hardware cloth across. We use 4 foot on the back, and that's overlapped. It would come about 4 foot up. You've got about another 2 foot left that's open. So we just ran another 4 foot and then cut the edges, bent around, and secured those with zip ties as well. Then to make it really strong, go back and weave in some 18 gauge wire. It's very easy to bend, very pliable, similar to what you'd find for electric fencing, but much less stiff. Smaller diameter, and that secures the hardware cloth, almost like just stitching it. And then we also ran 2 boards across the back, again furring strips. 1 to help hold the hardware cloth into place. 2, it'll allow us to hang buckets off the back, which will then feed bell waters, which we'll get into in the next video. So that's the back. For the front, similar process. You can see behind me right here, you basically had on each side of the door, we ran hardware cloth, same thing, wrapped it, zip tied it, and secured it to the peg. And then we ran some boards, again, using 3.5 inch bolts to secure those onto the structure. And then we had these old fence gates we have a cemetery on the farm, and we recently took the fencing out of that and put up some nice post and plank just to make it look a little nicer. The owner of the cemetery and his family, he lives across the street, and we just wanted to make sure it was taken care of. And we were already fencing a lot of the area for our horses, so we put some brand new post and plank fencing, painted, and I kept the gates from that. So these gates worked perfect. They're 4 foot wide by 5 foot tall. We still have the mesh on there now. I still need to coat those. What we're going to do is cover those with more hardware cloth, just to make sure, again, that no little hands can get in there and get the birds. Quick tip: if you're building a structure, try to have your doors planned ahead of time. It makes it a lot easier if you can find some doors for cheap, find some fence gates like this. Then when you're building the structure, you can build that to already fit the door you have. Otherwise, your option is just leaving a space for a door, guessing what you're going to put in there, and then trying to find something to fit that space. I think that's a lot harder. So try to find your doors first, or figure out what you're going to use for a door, and then build your structure based on that. And it'll save you a lot of time and make it easier. It's all galvanized fence post for the structure, even the verticals that the doors attach to. So it's very easy to find the hinges to attach with these doors. Again, we had these on hand, but you can buy these at Lowe's, Home Depot. They're not cheap. They're about $100 to $150 for each door. I would check around on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and places like that. Even for the fence rails, these fence rails that we use for the hoops and for the verticals were $20 each, so they're not cheap either. You can likely find these on Facebook, Craigslist, or there's probably people that even want this fence taken down and will even let you have the pieces if you take it down. Just something to think about and save you a little bit of money. Again, they're great for this project because they're strong. They'll hold feeders. Highly recommend if you're building any kind of big structure like this. We had thought about using cattle panels, which do work, but it's hard to really hang anything off of cattle panels. Once you get any significant weight, they'll start bending and swaying. I don't have to worry about that with these. So now that we've got our sides, we've got our front and back, we've got our door, the last thing we had to do, and you can see a little bit here, is put our purlins in. These are the vertical bars that run long ways across the top of the sled. The reason you want these is because if you don't, you've got your hoops running and your tarp is going to bend down in between those if you don't have verticals running along. The other reason is that these vertical pieces are what you're going to hang your feeders, your waters, different things from. So one, they help give it a lot of stability, they help give it shape, they help keep it from sagging and allow water to run off, and they help hold any feeders, waters, and tools that you may need to take care of your birds inside. We essentially went with 2, roughly at the 10 and 2 position. When we put the tarp on, we noticed that it was still sagging in the middle in between the hoops. So you definitely need 3. 2 at about the roughly 9 to 10 position, and 1 at roughly the 2 to 3 position. I'm referring to a clock. And then 1 right across the top at the 12 o'clock position. And then to make things easier, we're not going to hang anything from the middle one. That allows us to walk in the door and walk all the way back to the middle unimpeded. By hanging it on the one that's at the 10 and 2 positions, that allows us to walk to the middle, and then everything's on our left and right, just to help with efficiency a little bit. We found that especially with our Siskovich tractors, which are great tractors, they've served us well for years, but they're obviously smaller. Our feeders were hanging in the middle, so we're always trying to get in and around the feeders. When we designed this, we were trying to think of ways that we could be efficient and just not be climbing over things and stepping over things. So we're hanging them on the 2 outside purlins and leaving the center purlin just strictly for structure and to keep that walkway open. So once you've got your purlins on, the last step is putting on the tarp. So what you see behind me here is a 24 by 16 tarp. Now we ran into a little problem. The tarp went on great and was perfect, but it didn't, you can see behind me, it didn't quite make it down to the boards. And that board is where my hardware cloth stopped. Therefore, from the board to the top, there was an opening that didn't have any hardware cloth, didn't have anything. And this is why I said earlier, use a 3-foot hardware cloth or chicken wire, whatever you're using. That will definitely bring it up high enough so that the 16-foot tarp will then come down over it and cover it. Mistake we made, I didn't realize I did it with both of them. So what we ended up having to do was, once we got the tarp on, was lift the tarp and then run another 2-foot piece of hardware cloth, chicken wire. I had a bunch of things just on hand that I used up above this wood that you see behind me, but under the tarp, therefore just to close off that space. Again, if we would have just went with 3-foot high hardware cloth, that would have been perfect. Our boards are set at about 2 foot up off the ground, and that worked perfect as well. Then we've just put screws in each board. The tarp has grommets, and we used bungee balls to attach. Some of the bungee balls didn't quite reach. We got 4-inch bungee balls. Therefore, you may want to use zip ties just to lengthen those a little bit, or buy the 6 or 8-inch bungee balls. And I highly recommend attaching every one of those bungee balls. They work great on the tarp in that when the wind blows, that bungee will give it a little bit of give, and that will keep from ripping your tarp. Also, by having, I think we have 17 or 18 on each side, that means that no specific pressure is on one bungee ball. It's well distributed. Therefore, the tarp will last a long time, the bungee balls will last a long time, and your structure will last a long time. These tarps, I want to say, were about 75 bucks a piece on Amazon. And I've got links to all this stuff that we did below. It's not cheap, so we want to make it last as long as we can. So the bungee balls with their flexibility help. They're simple to use. We've used it on our Eggmobile for years now, and it's worked great. You can see the structure behind me. It's 24 by 12, set to hold about 200 birds. We move these with our ATV or tractor. Getting older, and we just got tired of moving stuff by hand. So we wanted something bigger that we could do more birds, but also with less wear and tear on our bodies. And this was the answer. I don't really have any specific plans other than these videos. I kind of just made this up as we were going. I've looked at many other plans where I've gotten ideas and then kind of put all those together to come up with this. So I'm glad to answer any questions you might have. Leave a comment below. I watch my comments closely and answer every one I can. Don't forget to watch part 1 of this video, where you'll see how we built the base that holds this entire structure. Part 3 of this video will be coming out next week. Just a little sneak peek. They're right here behind me, and we've already got the birds in it, and they're eating and doing well. And if you want to see another big structure that we built on the farm that holds up to 360 egg layers, check out this video here.